I can remember as doing several years ago on a weekly basis nursing home ministries, setting, which they tell you in seminary not to do, setting on the edge of a person's bed. They tell you either to stand or sit in the chair, but when someone tells you to sit on the bed with them, then you sit. And I can remember that the person I was talking to at that time was celebrating their 93rd birthday. As a young pastor, I asked this individual, what nuggets of wisdom could you share with me? And I didn't know exactly what I was going to get. But I can remember that one sentence that this individual gave me that I still have not forgotten. She has now gone on to be with the Lord, but her words still are alive. She said to me this, Pastor Ken, always remember to count your own blessings rather than counting others. Always remember to count your own blessings rather than counting others' blessings. Now, as years have gone by, I realize what that means. Don't get jealous because someone has something you don't have. Now, someone that was raised by his grandparents, I can have a deep appreciation of what it means to be in a household with older people. And I find myself drawn closer to older people sometimes than I do people my own age. And the reason why is because you learn that with older people comes a spirit of understanding and a spirit of contentment. You'll know that they come from a different time frame. We today have to have all the fancy gadgets. We have to have every new iPhone that's come out and everything else that comes. And there, believe it or not, they survived, this group here, some of them without ever turning a computer on and even having a Facebook account. This group here survived without having to text every 5 minutes what they were doing for lunch. This group here survived without, and you fill in the blanks, what we think we got to do. How did you do it? This group survived because they kept their eyes on Jesus. Not always, because I've heard some of their stories privately, and I won't share them until the time comes when you can't retaliate. Just hope that I do your funeral. But this group has had their ups and downs and all arounds. They've not always been good boys and girls. They like to have some fun. But in all of it, they also have kept their eyes focused on Jesus. One thing I believe each and every one of them would tell us as we now are looking at those days, hopefully in our own lives, is to count our own blessings rather than counting someone else's. One example in the Bible that I would probably say that paints a picture, the exact opposite of that, is found in Genesis 37. Look at verse 3 through 10 with me. It says, Now Israel loved Joseph more than his other sons because Joseph was a son born to him in his old age. And he had made a robe of many colors for him. And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not bring themselves to speak peacefully to him. And then Joseph had a dream. And when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, Listen to this dream I had. There were binding sheaves of grain in the field, and suddenly my sheaf stood up, and your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to it. Are you really going to reign over us? His brothers asked him. Are you really going to rule us? And so they hated him even more because of his dream and what he had said. And then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Look, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars were bowing down to me. He told his father and his brothers, but his father rebuked him. What kind of dream is this that you have had? He asked. Are you and your mother and brothers and I going to come down and bow down to the ground to you? His brothers were jealous of him. His father kept the matter in mind. And then if you'll turn to verse 18 of the same chapter, 18 and 20. They saw him in the distance. This is Joseph's brothers. And before he had reached them, they plotted to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes that dreamer. Come on, let's kill him and throw him into one of the pits. We can say that a vicious animal ate him, and then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." You have here a father who we don't know the exact age, but we know the Bible says he's old. You know how we defined old? Anyone older than us. And this man has a son, and that's his youngest son, and it's someone that at the time that he has at his old age, it says, but he loves him dearly. If you have more than one child, you know for a fact that you can't show partiality. I'm thankful my parents had one child so they didn't have to struggle with that. But now that I'm a parent and I have two children of my own, I've had both of them. Even though there's an 8-year age gap between them, I've had both children come to me at separate times and have made the comment, "Dad, you know I'm your favorite." And I will always say, let's just keep that between us. And sure enough, if I were to say that, it doesn't take long for Zoe to go run and tell Nathaniel, "I'm Daddy's favorite." And Nathaniel, if he hears the same thing, to run and tell Zoe he's my favorite. So now what I've decided to do to make things more interesting in my house is that now I say, "Zoe, you're my favorite daughter." And I'll tell Nathaniel, "Nathaniel, my favorite son." Well, Zoe's a little bit more quick at things, and she said, "Well, how many girls do you have?" She's the only one. The point is this, is that you know that if a parent shows favoritism, that jealousy can arise in a family. If you see someone getting more blessings than you, instead of just being content and saying, "Thank the Lord that they've been blessed," oftentimes what we do is that we get jealous, or the word would be envious, of what they have, and we want it. It might look like this. An older person whose hands have started to wrinkle, their walk has become slower. They see the young kids come down the aisle and sit down and listen to a children's sermon, and they become envious and say, "I wish that I could do that too." And then you get home and you realize, no, I don't want to relive those lives or those years. Miss Naomi's shaking her head because she knows exactly what that means. Maybe it's that you are driving your beat-up, paid-for car, and you see someone coming by in a brand new car, and you become envious and say, "Well, how in the world did they have that? I know where they work. I know how much they make." Just be thankful that you're still driving a car yourself. You see, the point is we need to learn from the words of wisdom that we should count our own blessings in life, because every one of you have a blessing. Every one of these, even though only 2 of our senior saints got up and spoke, every single one of them could stand here probably a lot longer than I could and talk about the blessings they have had. But I guarantee you that the blessings that they would talk about would not be material things or items that you could purchase at a store. The blessings that they would talk about is the relationships and the connections and the love that they have experienced throughout their journey. It's things you can never put a price tag on. Can you really put a price tag on 60 years of marriage? Can you really put a price tag on grandchildren? Or for some of these young folks here, great-grandchildren? Can you really put a price tag on friendship? That when you can't go and get your mail, someone is willing to go get it for you. Or someone's willing simply to bring your trash can to your house when it was at the edge of the road. You see, those are things that I guarantee you at the end of our life that we should be more focused in on and not envious of what everyone else has. If you can lay on your bed at night and know that you are loved, you have blessings. You see, it wasn't that Joseph's brothers were not loved by their father. It was that they focused so much on the father's love for Joseph that they had forgotten that they were loved too. They were envious because they got a coat. He got a coat of many colors. Proverbs 14:30 says, a tranquil heart is life to the body, but jealousy is rottenness to the bones. Proverbs 10:12 says, hatred stirs up strife, but love covers all offenses. Psalms 37:1, it says, don't fret because of evildoers, and don't be envious of those who do wrong. And lastly, James 3:16, for where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. You see, the brothers of Joseph decided because that they were so envious of his blessings that they had devised a plan to kill him. But they didn't kill him because God had a plan for Joseph. Now, I can understand they probably got a little irritated, and you would too if you had 10 or 11, 12, 13 brothers, or even one other brother or sister, and they told you that, you know what, there's going to come a day that you're going to bow down to me. That might cause a little friction in the house. And so, yes, natural instinct of anger starts coming out. But what they didn't realize is that Joseph was telling them a prophetic dream that God had given him. You see, today I want to leave you with this. I want to leave you with the ideas that when you look at what your grandparents have or your mom and dad have, never forget what I had heard someone say in my family. When I went to them, I said, man, it must be nice. Your car's paid off. You got your house that's paid off. You got all of this. You can go do this. You can go do all these other things. And they looked at me and said, but it wasn't always that way. What you see, I had to work for. You see, sometimes we younger people, and I'm 39, so I still feel like I'm young until August. But we younger folks, we look at what the older generation has, and we want it without what it takes to get it. No one handed these people what they had. They had to work for it. They were sharecroppers. They picked cotton. They did whatever they had to do to make it. But yet we live in a spirit of entitlement. Envious. That's what it's all about. We're envious of what others have. Well, how about dust off that enviness and get off the couch of laziness and go to work, and maybe you'll have what these people have. Don't wait for these people, these saints, to go to glory to get what they have. If you were here last week, you know that you just might not look up. You had to listen to the sermon on that one. I've already had some negative feedback saying you might have just got me rode out of the wheel. To that, I would say that you might not have ever been in it. The point I'm getting to this, and I'll close, because I know you're hungry and you smell the chicken because you're Baptist. The point is, at the end of the day, the way you handle things in this life says a lot. There were 7 deadly sins that's been mentioned in church history. One of the 7 deadly sins is envy, jealousy. One thing I think that each one of these senior saints would tell us is don't be jealous of other people's blessings. Be thankful for what you already have. And maybe some of you are sitting here right now thinking to yourself, well, Ken, I don't have anything to be thankful for. I would say then do the breath test. Now, I don't mean that you've been pulled over for DWI. I mean the breath test where you simply breathe in and breathe out. Did you know if you did that, you are blessed? There's people today I know for a fact that are hooked up to machines that has to do that for them. Maybe do the clothes test. You say, well, Ken, I don't have fancy clothes, but do you have clothes? Or did any of you come here naked? Maybe it's the memory test. Can you remember the friends you had and the love that you experienced in life? Are you blessed? Oh yeah, other people have things. But just because they have things don't mean that they're happy and blessed. I'd rather sit in a nursing home with an elderly person and talk to them about what God has done, knowing that if God can do it for them, that He's no greater person that He would also do it for me and do it for you. The blessings that they have received, you can receive also. But the key and the secret is to remain faithful. Did you ever hear any of them, if they were to give their testimony, did you ever hear any of them just simply say, I gave up because I got ticked off? Or I gave up because I just didn't want to do it anymore? I love what Miss Sophie said. It was almost biblical. You could put it in one of the books of the Bible. She said many of the jobs she held in church simply because people didn't want to do it. Because she came from that generation that you don't wait around and because everybody else doesn't want to do it, so I'm not going to do it either. What about you? Don't wait till you get this group, this age group, to think that you've been blessed. You can count your blessings. Count them one by one. Count your many blessings. And see what God has what. And He has done a great thing. Let's pray.